Do you struggle with your long runs, or are you looking to take your long runs to the next level in your upcoming marathon training block? Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my personal progression from the start of my running journey to now, and provide you guys with some examples of runs that you can start implementing today. What is up guys, Andy Forrest Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're talking all about how you guys can improve your long runs to help you run a faster marathon. So I talk about long runs quite a bit on this YouTube channel. In fact, they are my favourite workout or run of the week, however you want to see it, and especially depending on whether I'm in a marathon training block or not. And I'm excited today to share with you progression from beginner to advanced in terms of how I've progressed from the very beginning section of my running all the way up to now, running comfortably over 2 hours, putting in workouts and sharing how I got from A to B, and hopefully giving you guys some practical examples if you're stuck or in a bit of a rut with your long run to help you take that next step. There's plenty of videos on the channel about my favorite types of long run workouts and other bits and pieces like that, but today I'm focusing on specifics and sharing with you guys what you can do to help you take that next step. So if you're excited for today's video guys, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and let's dive in to the start. So here we go, let's dive straight into step one. Going right back to the beginning when I was running sort of 20-30 minute runs midweek and then 40 to 45 minute runs on the long run on the weekend. Now what I decided to do in my first dedicated time to increasing my long run, because I knew at that point that I just wanted to get better at the half marathon distance, was I set myself a little bit of an 8-week plan. I did this all myself and you'll understand why in a minute, because it wasn't the best, but just showing you the progression that I made at that point. An 8-week plan where I basically, a 9-week plan where I did 3 chunks of increasing my long runs in 3 weekly cycles. And the first point I did was for the first 2 weeks I held a new highest amount of time on feet, and then the third week I would drop back and do a faster finish long run. So for example, I was doing 45 minutes and I was very comfortable with that. What I wanted to do was get myself up to an hour. So in the first 2 weeks, after doing 45-minute long runs for flipping months, I went to 50 minutes. It was really hard getting those extra 5 minutes in. I remember it very well. And I knew that I had to commit to that at the end of the following week. And I knew, and I'd done a lot of reading at that point about training and working in 4 weekly cycles and blocks, but I knew I couldn't sustain that for 4 weeks at a time. I probably could have done, but mentally it felt very hard. So I decided to work in 3 weekly chunks. And when I'd done 2 weeks at 50 minutes each, I then dropped back to 40 minutes on the third week. But with a caveat, at that point, I did 35 minutes at that nice easy pace. And that's all my long runs were at this point, just pure easy running. The final 5 minutes, I decided to pick up the pace. No specific intensity, no specific pace. I just thought to myself, put in an extra effort for the final 5 minutes. So what I was doing was increasing the miles on the first 2 weeks, dropping the volume back on the third week, but adding a little bit of intensity in. When I'd done that and I had cut back that whole week, so what I really did in that whole week was kind of cut back 5 minutes off every single run. So I focused on 2 weeks higher time on feet, 1 week slightly less, but put a bit of quality in that final long run. Then I went to 55 minutes, and then on the third week 45 minutes with 40 minutes easy and 5 minutes hard, or 5 minutes, whatever I could manage. And then I went to 60 minutes, and then 50 minutes with 5 minutes hard at the end. So 45 minutes easy and then 5 minutes hard. And I only ever stuck to the 5 minutes, but it just seemed to work a treat, because after that, I suddenly felt that like 50 to 55 minutes became really, really comfortable. Whereas that was what 45 minutes felt like at the beginning of the block. And just by repeating that process over the coming months really helped me take my long runs up and over the 1 hour mark, whereas before it very much sat around the 40 to 45 minute mark. And now I start moving into the intermediate area, an area where I really start to step up my long run game. And in terms of time, I've been running for just over 8 years now, and I'm talking about that beginner section that I just did. That was really taking up the first sort of 18 to 24 months. And then this section really was the next couple of years, and the final section we'll talk about was more so the final 4 years. Now I'm going to give you some examples of some runs that I was doing in this intermediate time, because my goal here was to get comfortably into the 130s for the half marathon and then eventually break that. And I knew deep down that I needed to really work on my speed endurance, work on my endurance in general, and get my long runs up to 90 minutes and over. I wanted that stretch goal of hitting 2 hours, but that really would be taking it all out of me. 90 minutes, I wanted to become what originally was my 45 minutes, where it was really, really comfortable. To do this, there was a few different types of long run workouts I used to do. And again, here when I talk about on reps or pace changes, there was no specific pace I was trying to hit. At this time, I was still kind of getting used to the fact that I was building up the mileage, and rather than saying I want to try and hit half marathon pace or 10k pace or whatever, it literally would just be purely by effort and whatever I could muster up. And that then built me on to this final section, which we'll talk about shortly. So some of the types of examples I used to do, and something that you guys might want to consider if you're in that beginner section and want to take the next step, is again faster finish long runs, where I was just simply going, right, I'm going to run for an hour, and then I know I can comfortably run for 90 minutes, but for 1 week, let's do an experiment. Let's run easy for an hour, and then let's increase the pace, and let's just see how long I can hold it for. And I remember distinctly running for around 15 to 17 minutes at this harder effort, and then having to stop, but going, all right, okay, I increased the pace here by about 17 minutes at the end of it, meaning that I ran for just over 75 minutes. That's a good benchmark, that's a good start. And I knew then where I could start to push slightly, go, right, the next goal will be 20 minutes and then 25. I think I basically just worked up to the point of finishing at 30 minutes. So I was eventually, over the coming months, finishing at 60 easy and 30 hard. Also, mile on, mile off. So what I would do is something like 15-20 minutes easy, and then I would go, right, for 1 mile I'm going to run a bit harder, and then I'm going to go back to my easy pace for a mile. And I would do that maybe 3, 4, 5 times. So I would actually, in terms of mileage, I would do that for sort of like 6 to 8 to 10 miles, more so the 10 miles towards the end of this block, but 6 in the beginning. I remember doing 3 by a mile on, a mile off, and thinking that I was going to conquer the world because it felt so good, and then putting an extra 15 minutes on the end. Or another great example is something that, well, I call it a sandwich workout. Lots of people have different names for it, but you put sort of 10 minutes worth of hard effort in, and then you have a 2-minute jog, and then you might do 5 by 2 minutes when you're putting in even harder effort in, and then you go back to then having another 2-minute jog and putting a final 10-minute effort in before you put your easy chunk on the end. And if you notice here, what I'm talking about is I'm not ever really exerting over 30 minutes worth of harder work in the long run. That final finish was only going up to 30 minutes. 10, 5 by 2 and 10 only totaled up to 30 minutes, and I always made sure I never really went over that. And then with the mile on, mile off, I started to decrease the pace on those harder efforts so that I could get more reps in, and we'll talk about that in the advanced section. So I was really focusing on just eventually, over those 2 years, getting in 30 minutes of quality over the long run duration. And then finally, at the point where I've broken 90 minutes in the half marathon and really wanted to kick on, this is where I would class it more as the advanced section. And for those of you out there that are really striving to get to this point, I would say for me personally, I was getting much more comfortable with 2 hours as a long run. Yeah, it was still a bit of a stretch, but I could go to maybe 2 hours 15, 2 hours 20 as my real stretch goal in the beginning, but be comfortable with 1 hour 45. And then as to now, in my last London Marathon training block, running 2 hours 30 most weekends with pushing it to 2 hours 45. So that's kind of the realm that I'm talking about as going in this final 4 years from the beginning up to now. And for me, that's just encompassed one main thing, and that really is not just putting efforts in, not just increasing the pace, but at this point it really was focusing on specific goal paces. So of course I've done more dialed in long run workouts at this point, and you can find a lot of those on the channel. I will give you some examples here, but this will be sections where I go, right, I'm training for a marathon, so I'm going to do 30 minutes easy, and then I want to do an hour at marathon pace, and then I'll finish off with an hour easy. So rather than going, I'm going to run 30 minutes and put an hour's effort in, and whatever that'll be, it was really a case of going, right, I need to start fine tuning this. I need to start getting my body used to running at these goal paces, because we want to become efficient at these goal paces. And that, I think, as a runner, you start to understand as you get more into the sport, you understand that your body will become more efficient if you run in certain zones or certain paces or certain efforts. You just become more efficient at it, and that throughout a training block can be absolutely key. If you're doing 12 weeks worth of work, you want these gradual progression long runs where by the end of it, or in the beginning, the marathon pace or half marathon pace might feel tough, but by the end it feels second nature to you. And if someone said to you, right, go and run half marathon pace or marathon pace, you could dial into it pretty darn quickly. So again, simple things like fast finish long runs, or like chunks in the beginning, like I just talked about, where I have 1 hour specific at marathon pace, or even still like I do now, sandwich workouts, but going right, the 10 minutes either side, a half marathon pace, the 2 minutes in the middle, a 10k pace, and really trying to dial in to hitting those specific paces. That can make a massive difference, because naturally what we can sometimes do if we're just putting in efforts is we can just go, oh well, this will be enough of an effort to be the stimulus that I need. But actually sometimes we need that extra bit of a push, or I find I do, and that extra bit of a push means that I'm looking at my watch a bit more, going, right, my 10k pace is this, I actually need to increase this a little bit. Let's see if I can increase it, and if I can't, then I know that this workout's too hard for me. I'll just do what I can and then go back to the drawing board. Once I finish a run, just finish it, bank it, and then replan for the week after. But what I really found has made a massive difference is the bigger, longer marathon pace chunks in there. So where I talked earlier in the intermediate section about 30 minutes worth of what I would class as maybe tempo work or just a hard effort, bigger, longer marathon chunks, which is still keeping things very aerobic, working nicely on that aerobic engine, but getting in over those 2 hours, because naturally when we go over 2 hours, we're helping our body build more capillaries, which helps transport the oxygen to the muscles and gets rid of the waste products quicker, and that helps our speed endurance and our endurance in general, and that's the goal when we get over that 2 hour mark. So those longer sustained paces, sections of marathon pace, really makes all the difference. And in my previous marathon training block, I got to the point where I was running 16 miles consistently at marathon pace as a workout, and then in the long run I might be doing something like 2 hours 30, 2 hours 40. At a moderate, steady effort, I might take it to the hills, so my heart rate, my effort pushes up slightly, but I'm working on that strength to get the legs stronger, but also keeping things very aerobic, and I find that steady zone to be a really good benefit as well. So I hope that's given you guys a bit of an idea as to how I've transitioned from really being a much more of a beginner runner to where I am now, how I've progressed the long run, starting with that small, tiny 5-minute harder effort at the end, progressing to just putting in efforts, to then progressing to putting in proper specific pace work and getting that long run up and over the 2 hours. It really can be something that takes time. Patience is something us runners don't have much of, but if we are patient and we are sensible and we progress this gently, it will pay massive rewards later on in our running journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, because I know so many people prefer to get their workouts done in midweek and save their long runs for just easy running, and that's absolutely fine. Again, that's just a gentle progression of easy run, time on feet, getting that up and over 2 hours without doing any workouts. I understand some people much prefer to do that, but if you are looking to improve yours, or you have and you've got to sort of the level that I've talked about, I'd love to hear what progressional steps you guys have taken. If there's any more info that you feel you can share that will benefit people, I'd love to hear it in the comments, and I'm sure everyone else would love to read it too. That's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Until then.